Hello there, my lovelies. Welcome to episode 7, wow, of season 2 for listening to the voices in our heads with me, Jenna O'Malley, your soul writer. We are sitting down with our friend Adam Gaffen, the writer behind the Cassidy Chronicles, today. And we're talking about all types of different character creation. And of course, Kendra just cannot stop showing up. So, come on, my friends, let's sit back and have a blast for about an hour as we listen to the voices in our heads. Let's rock it. Welcome back, my lovelies, to another episode of Listening to the Voices in Our Heads with Jenna O'Malley, your soul writer, and a new friend of ours. Hello, Adam. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Jenna. It's good to be here.
I see you've got a four-legged fur baby walking around in the background. Pupper or catter?
Well, the odds are 50-50 either way because we have 5 of each.
Okay, I only have 7 cats. 5 dogs. Wow.
Yep, we started getting the first animal we had after we got after my wife and I got together and moved in was a cat. We still have him. He's somewhere or other. And then we got a couple of dogs, and he beat them into submission because he was bigger than they were as puppies.
Right.
And he's done the same thing to all the puppies since. So, yeah, so 5 dogs, 5 cats.
Oh, wow. And I apologize if we have one of our elder kitties putting in her 2 cents. I tried feeding her. She won't go to take her typical nap. I think she's missing daddy. I apologize for that.
Cats will do what cats will do. People just have to get used to it.
They own me, not the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about yourself as far as your books and things of that natures go.
Sure. So I'm a science fiction author. Primarily, I dabble in a bunch of other things. The first, back when self-publishing was just starting to get going on Amazon, I had written a couple of little Sherlock Holmes stories, and those were the first things I put up there. And they're still up there. I've polished them a tiny bit since then, but they came out really well. You know, I got that voice, that Arthur Conan Doyle voice, because they're supposed to be a pastiche. They're supposed to be a Sherlock Holmes story, and he wrote in a very particular style. So, you know, I put them together. I've actually, believe it or not, it was more a out of fun project. I had the audiobook done. You know, it's only half an hour long for 2 stories. You know,
That's not long at all.
no, it's not long at all. But it was fun to hear, and I found a narrator to do it who is British, and so she, perfect for it. So, like I said, primarily a science fiction author, and I write the Cassidy Chronicles. There are currently 5 novels in the series, and 5 novels. There is a box set which has all 5 novels plus an exclusive novelette.
Wow.
Yeah, I am in the middle of writing a new Cassidyverse novel. That's what I was doing before we started talking, and it's what I'll be doing after we finish.
I understand that.
Yeah. I have also written a Vela project, again, set in the Cassidyverse. The Vela project is really a prequel because in the books I allude to the friendship that the 2 main characters had as they were growing up. They grew up as neighbors. They were best friends. So I thought it would be fun to write a memoir from the perspective of one of the main characters. And so that turned into a Vela project. And now that the Vela project is done, it has been turned into a short novel,
Oh, wow.
which is going to be which is going to be released in February of next year. And this is the first time, so cross your fingers for me. I'm trying to have a coordinated release. I'm trying to have the ebook, the Dead Tree editions, and the audiobook all done and released at the same time. It's too early yet for me to start pulling out my hair, but don't worry, I'm sure I'll get there. So that's coming out. I wrote a Christmas Cassidy story for an anthology, Whimsical Winter Wonderland, part of the Holiday Hijinks anthologies edited by Lynn Worthen. Those should be out now. There may have been a slight delay. And now, as for where you can find me, besides here, like I said, I'm thrilled to be here. I've been looking forward to doing this, listening to the voices in our head. Absolutely. I've been looking forward to doing this for a while. But you can find me on my website, CassidyChronicles.com. That is undergoing a major revision. I got a really talented web designer to do it, and she is, you may have heard of her, Mallory Cooper.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I've been wanting to get her to work on mine so badly. I hear she's worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Every penny. She showed me yesterday a preview of what it's going to look like, and I'm just like, oh, give it to me now. Give me the website. So the website, it's going to be amazing. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Instagram. Adam Gaffen. The benefit of having a unique name is I don't have to hide behind, Adam Gaffen 38 or anything like that.
Right.
I don't have to do any of those funky things what they have to do for Instagram handles. No, just Adam
like
Gaffen.
Mine.
Yep. So, and the last place, if you want to get a hold of me directly, just shoot me an email, adamgaffenauthor@gmail.com.
All easy ways to track you down, for sure.
Absolutely.
My author pen name, I purposefully went something a little common and went too common, and that's how I landed with the tag I got. It's like, okay, it's long, but it works.
So. Hey, it's long, but it's memorable. Okay.
There you go. And that's all that mattered. So,
yes.
As far as for you and your process, my pal, are you a plotter, a pantster, or a plantster?
I would say it's probably a plantster. I know where I want my books to end. I know the resolution I want to get to at the end of a given book. I have no idea how I'm going to get there. Absolutely none.
Yes.
As I'm writing it, it's a revelation to me as much as it is to the reader, as they, when they get their hands on it, months later. The one I'm doing right now, which I still haven't settled on a title for.
Really?
Yeah, I kind of do things backwards. The title comes to me eventually as I'm writing the book. And this one, the current working title just doesn't quite fit. Part of that is because I just had a major plot twist come in, which I totally didn't expect.
I know that pain.
Yeah. The nice thing is I am intending this to kick off another branch in the Cassidyverse. See, the first 5 books were all about Ayana and Kendra.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it really focused in on those two. They are the main characters, absolutely, positively. But now that that arc is done, I'm still going to write about them. They're too much a part of me not to write about it, especially Kendra. And I'm sure we'll talk more about her because she has a way of inserting herself into conversations.
I've been told that in group passing that you have one of those characters. It'll be pleasant to interact.
Yes. So, the first five are about those two, but there are so many other interesting characters who are touched on here and touched on there, and they're major secondary characters. They don't carry the books, but without them, the books would be a lot poorer. So I've taken some of them and I'm dropping them in a ship and sending them off on a mission and saying, okay, here you go. And now this book is following that ship on their mission. And Kendra has made a couple appearances. Yes, of course she has, because she can't help herself.
She
But
just can't.
but it's going to be about them. And since I don't know, like I said, I'm a plantser. Since I don't know where this particular branch of the series is going to end, the fact that there was a major plot twist involving a rogue planet and possibly time travel, sure, why not? Let's go for it.
Why not? The stars are literally the limit in this case, as my imagination statement.
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. So, what are your methods of character personality creation then? Because Kendra alone has one that just will not be contained, it seems.
Some of it goes to what role they have to play in the story is going to reflect their character. Uh, that being said, one of my favorite characters is Daniela Garcia. She she was written in because I had an idea for a clever nickname. So I have to explain a little bit. Although the pilots, just like our reality here, all the pilots have handles. So one of the pilots, her handle is Flashdance. Another one is Shooting Star. Another one is Steamboat because his name was Brian Fulton, Fulton Steamboat.
Oh, really? That's clever.
So they all have nicknames. And Daniela, so I had this nickname, Double Dip. Why was it important? Well, because in the shuttles that they're flying, there's a pilot and an engineer. And the pilot has always got emergency training as an engineer, and the engineer has emergency training as a pilot. So that, if the pilot suffers a stroke, they're not going to crash when they try to land. But they're not really rated to do the other one's job. It's just kind of like, okay, if I have to, I can fake it long enough to get on the ground.
You can tap out,
Daniela,
basically.
yes, exactly. Daniela was written to be double dip because she is fully trained as both. So I created this character just because I wanted to use that handle, and little did I know that in the third book, she got tapped to be the test pilot for a new generation of space fighters.
Mm-hmm.
And as a space fighter, there's only one person. So they have to be trained as a pilot and an engineer. They have to be able to do all the things. And she's the only person in the fleet who is trained that way. So she was the test pilot. And then once they got out of testing, she was the instructor pilot. She had to train the new cadets.
Goodness.
And then she became the squadron commander, because who else? She just trained them. They know her. She's in command. And she's become actually a very important character. I actually wrote a microfiction piece. It's about 1,500 words, just about her, because she has turned into a really interesting character, and she's really developed and really become more and more important as the story's gone on.
And it's subtly for her, it sounds like, as opposed to Kendra, who's more let me be in the limelight. Sounds like Danielle is okay for it to happen over the course of more books by comparison. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, well, Kendra has been there from the start. she is there. I'm thinking about it. I don't think I actually name any of the major characters on the first page in the first chapter of the first book. They're referred to as just he and she. Thinking about that. Anyways, but Kendra is there from the very first, and she and Ayana are the focus. But Kendra, once we got to the second book, which was another interesting process, it wasn't supposed to be a Cassidy book. It was supposed to be just another book, except it wasn't working until I added those characters into it and dropped it into their universe. And then all of a sudden it started working, and Kendra more or less took over. In the other four books, 2 through 5, she's the one who is growing more, developing more, and answering the questions that are posed in the background of all the books. Every book has a question, all right? Every book, whoever writes it, whatever the subject, every book has a question that it's trying to answer. The first book is asking the question, what are you willing to do to find or save your family? And it's, family is defined as Cass and Ken, Ayana and Kendra, and what are they willing to do to save each other? The second book starts focusing more on Kendra, because the question becomes, what are you going to do when you're handed more responsibilities that you weren't expecting? Now, Ayana has some more responsibilities. Her character development continues, but Kendra's really takes a big leap, and she's the one who has to deal with it. The third book, I've really pivoted to focusing on Kendra, because the central twist in the plot is all about her. And it's about something that she didn't even know happened. Something she didn't know was true about her. So first she had to accept the truth about it, and then she has to fight in order to keep this secret from destroying her dream.
Oh my goodness.
And then the fourth book is, when do you say enough's enough? When do you say, I'm not playing games anymore? We're gonna end this. And the fifth one asks, what are you willing to pay for your dream? And the dedication I have in that book is to those who looked at death and decided the price was not too high.
Oh, wow. I love that. That speaks to so many people in so many different ways. Oh my goodness.
So Kendra's been the one driving, really. Books 3 through 5 are driven by Kendra and her idealism, her dreams, and, not to be too blunt, but her stubbornness. I mean, she's got a stubborn streak a mile wide. She will not. She does not accept no as an answer.
So you already mentioned then, even for her and others of not so bold personas, that they have code names. Do names really matter for characters and titles? You mentioned how with one character it was literally she double dipped her skills. Have some names not mattered as much for other characters then?
On the whole, because I'm mostly on the side of a pantser, the characters end up fitting their roles rather than their names. And one of the things that I have had so much fun doing even from the very first book, is I have included the names of people, real people, who have said, sure, go ahead, use my name. It's not because I had a character in mind that I wanted to build on them. It's just because I'm friends with them and I wanted to put them into the book. And so, you know, Amanda McAllister, for example, is physically, she's a little bit like the character Mac, but she doesn't talk like Mac. Uh, Mac was fun to write because she's an agent in this sort of gray area company called Outlook, and but she's not an assassin. She's not a courier. She's not really somebody who goes out and hurts people and breaks things like Christina Montana. She's an IT specialist, so she's a hacker, and so she tends to ramble. No, no, rambling implies she does it slowly. She does nothing slowly. It's and I've written entire paragraphs which are half a page long, and it's Mac talking, and there's one period at the end of it because it's all one run-on sentence because that's the way she talks and that's the way she thinks. I mean, her squirrels are, they're in the back, downing Red Bulls and going, yeah.
I love it. I love it.
So, but Amanda, the real person, isn't like that. So the names don't really fit the people. They're not they're not deliberately chosen to fit the character that they need to be, unless the exception I will make to that is during these 5 books, there's a conflict with the Artemis colony, which is the lunar colony. And, at this point, 100 years from now, it's an independent nation. And there are 4 families which hold most of the power. So I had to come up with names for the 4 families, and they're all descended from the first 4 people to colonize. The first 4 people to stay on the moon. So they are the oldest families on the moon. So those people, if I wanted to show the extent of the nepotism and the extent of the corruption and the relationships going on, then they'd be from one of those 4 families. So none of those people are actually names I drew from real life.
So it not so much that the name serves the purpose so much as the purpose comes first. Then that makes absolute sense. So how do you then make your characters come alive to your readers? Kendra seems to do it on her own, and I imagine some of the historical dirt from some of those families might come into play. But otherwise, how do you make people hate or love your characters?
It's all in what they say and do. My books are very dialogue driven because that's what life is. We are talking as human beings. We talk to people all the time. Now, whether that's live, face to face, over Zoom links, on Facebook, text messaging, Messenger, whatever, we are talking to people all the time. From the time we get up to the time we go to bed, we are talking to people. That is our primary way of interacting with the world. And that's the face that we show the world. So why would characters in a book not do the same thing? These books that go on for 20 pages of description, maybe loving description and, fantastic world building and immersing you in the environment. But that's not how people really operate. So my characters, they're constantly, they're back and forth. They're telling, they're showing what's going on in the book by how they're reacting to it. So, and they're, and then that their actions are based. You get their actions based on what other people are telling them. The one I'm writing now, one of the characters is talking, and she realizes that one of her team members is doing something stupid, and she's like, Grayson, what are you doing? So it cues the reader into, okay, what's going on here? And then I show them what's been going on, but you get the reaction first, and then, because that's what, that's the way we as human beings operate. So why would a character not do it? I might be the author, I might be writing down the words, but it is the characters' stories that I am writing.
I like the way you worded that. I really like the way you worded that. Often, my editor is telling me, shut up and get out of the way of your characters. And that's kind of where I've taken it, to be more dialogue heavy first. So do you find that allows for you to be more loose and free with what your characters say? A la, okay, I can't believe I just wrote that, or thanks for telling me that now, kind of deal reactions you might have to your own characters?
Sometimes, again, I don't necessarily know where any particular scene is going to end up. I just wrote one yesterday. Again, pantser, and it occurred to me I needed a late scene, so I went back and added one in, and much to my surprise, one of the characters ended up in bed. I didn't know this was going to happen. I guess she had a good time at dinner, and then when they went out dancing,
Dancing.
and yes, dancing, yes. Well, you have to understand. Okay, yes, they're on this new one is set on a starship, right? But it's a starship that's 4 kilometers long. It's got 4,000 people on it.
That's a floating city.
Yes, it is. It is. It's 4 kilometers long, 2 kilometers wide, and almost a kilometer from the hull to the keel, because it's meant to go out on like a 3-year mission and not return during those 3 years. So it's got to be self-sufficient. So one of the things that Kendra had a hand in the design. She might not know the nuts and bolts, but she has the vision. So part of her design is in the center of this ship, and it's a long ship. In the center of the ship, on the top deck, extending about a kilometer and a half, and going across the entire deck, is what gets called the mall. And it's an open space, it's green space, but it's shops and restaurants, and it's a place for the crew to gather. So everything that you would expect in a town of 4,000 people is probably going to be represented there. There's a lot of automation, so you don't have to have a lot of people doing necessarily the grunt work. The cooking and cleaning and all that. A lot of that is taken care of by robotics. No, Arnie. Sorry, being interrupted by a cat.
I have one at my feet doing the same thing, so no shame.
he walks over and sits up and taps at my arm.
That's exactly what I'm getting right now. Right on my leg and my arm, getting scratched up. So you're okay.
So in this mall, there are restaurants, and yes, there's a place that they could go dancing. And I had no idea that Nicole was going to end up in bed with Jessa and Grayson until it did.
Well, thanks for the news, guys.
I mean,
wow.
There has been interest. See, no, Arnie, now I'm talking. So there has been interest going on between them through earlier chapters. I just didn't know that it was going to happen right then.
Understood. So, what other ways do your characters communicate with you? Either if it's writer's block, are they always constantly talking, taking over scenes like Kendra when they're not in control and things of that nature then?
Right. My wife likes to say that I'm the only writer she's ever known she's never known to suffer writer's block. Um, I probably shouldn't necessarily say anything about it, but it's true. I mean, there are days that it's just kind of like, I don't feel like writing this one. But again, since I'm a pantser, I can just skip on to something else, and that catches my interest more. So, yeah, the characters are always telling me, okay, this is what's going on. This is what's going on. This is what, or from their perspective, this is what happened. I see myself more as a biographer for them rather than, writing out where they're going. They're telling me where they've been.
In your case, maybe
me,
like a report or like data log recording sometimes type of feel.
Not even so much that as, all right, so Kendra, again, always goes back to Kendra. Kendra really does have a personality of her own. She's on Facebook. She's on Instagram. She has her own email. She has her own newsletter. And so she will interact. When she's posting in groups that I'm also in, she refers to me as her biographer. And she's constantly going on about how I am distorting the facts in order not to corrupt the timeline. And that's kind of a running argument that we have back and forth. So
I love it.
So and Kendra in this one has shown up a couple times, surprisingly. I had to have her at the beginning of the book because it's introducing a whole new branch to the Cassidyverse. So I needed to have familiar figures at the beginning saying, okay, this is what's going on, and kind of grounding it. And she's popped in a couple of times, and everybody knows her, right? In this series, she's creating a fleet. She's created the Terran Federation. Which has turned into a political organization. It was just supposed to be exploration, kind of like a National Geographic for the stars. That was all it was supposed to be, and somehow she got sucked into politics, and she hates it. And so she's never been much for formality. I mean, her idea of how to deal with ranks in informal settings, when all these people are saying, Admiral, Admiral, she's like, look, after I call you by your first name once, you can call me by my name once. Okay, let's try it. Shannon, Kendra, good. So she's very informal. She jumps the chain of command, and she encourages her people to look at her not as some kind of godlike, oh, she's the admiral, she's in charge, but she's Kendra. That's the way she wants to be seen.
Don't put her on a pedestal, just accept her for who
Don't,
she is. Love
right,
it.
warts and all.
So, as far as what people do and don't say about her and how she wants to be seen, is it therefore more important to pay attention to how a character talks about themselves? Or more so, is it important to you about how other people talk about and react to them?
It's mostly how the others react to them, although my characters do have, the internal monologues, and the thought bubbles, and especially when I, especially when their actions and their words aren't necessarily matching up with what they're intending or what they're planning or what they're expecting, um, then the reader's going to get a little thought bubble, letting them know, okay, this is not what I expected. Um, but it's mostly how um, how they how they're interacting with the other characters and how the other characters are responding to them. That
Mm,
is mostly going to their shape the perception of their personality.
hmm.
Um, and now that's not to say that there aren't some duplicitous snakes throughout these books. There's one of my beta readers was about ready to, like call me up and yell at me because, yeah, she was reading it and she couldn't believe that I did what I did with that particular character,
Oh
um, because she didn't want to believe that that character was that was that two-faced, um, which to me was like, yes, because I dropped little hints. I
no.
dropped hints as you went along. So she told me, after I read that scene, I understood how we got to this point. I still didn't like it.
Right. Oh my goodness. And definitely worth the moment of going, yes, I did it right. It was worth the
Mm-hmm.
hard work and the road you paved for it. So, what are tips for fighting off characters who aren't playing fair with other characters then? How do you corral them? I
I
don't
don't
is
know that
also an answer.
yeah, I was gonna say I don't know that I necessarily corral them, because the way I look at it is if a character is really pushing themselves to be part of a scene, part of a chapter, part of part of a book, um, then there's a reason that they're trying to be there. I might not know what that reason is yet, and the only way I'm going to find out what that reason is by continuing to write it. Um, that one of the writing groups I'm in, we say to each other, look, you have to write the words. It doesn't matter how good the words are when you start, because if you don't write them, you can't edit them to make them better.
Correct.
So I'd much rather get them out and see where it went and see if it makes sense, or see if it almost makes sense and just needs a couple tweaks here and there, um, rather than say, no, we're not going down that rabbit hole,
Mhm.
um, because you end up with some really interesting rabbit holes.
This is true. Very true. Oh my goodness. So, as far as those rabbit holes go, being more in the panster end of things, have there been times where you've written a rabbit hole and then gotten a rabbit hole from a rabbit hole? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah,
I've
yep.
not had that happen yet, so that's why I'm asking what it's like. I'm curious.
Yeah. So it's more like it's not so much rabbit holes and rabbit holes as dominoes falling. Um, so in the second book, as we're introduced to the Artemis colony and the Primus, who's a real piece of work. Uh, I make no bones about it. She is the villain. All right. She is the antagonist. There's just nothing likable about her. You meet her as she's throwing her half brother or ordering her half brother thrown out onto the surface of the moon without a suit. Yeah. So
What?
she's not a she's not a nice person. Okay.
No!
And
Red
so
Queen of Hearts has nothing on this woman. Good lord. Oh.
and and so but in a very convoluted way, that very first scene where she's showing her propensity for just tossing people out the airlock is what ends up coming to bite her in the end because one thing leads to another. So she has a minister of war who is trying to has been ordered to take out this just born Terran Federation and Kendra and her starships. Um, and she's told, this minister of war is told, either do this or go for a walk on the surface without a suit. Don't save me the trouble. So it doesn't quite work, and the minister disappears, leaves a message that says, you know, I've gone for a walk. Now she doesn't actually go out and kill herself. She disappears into the Undercity and eventually is rescued and becomes a fairly major character down the road. But because she does that, now the Primus needs a new Minister of War, right? So one of her assistants goes to the meeting with an assistant of his, and the Primus asks him a question, and he can't answer it, and she's just like, "No, him out." And she immediately promotes his assistant to be the next Minister of War because she was able to answer the question. Um, that person, again, dominoes keep falling. So things happen. She ends up on the wrong side of the Primus. She manages to escape the moon um, through one bit of subterfuge and another, puts her assistant in position. He then creates a situation where half of the Artemis fleet mutinies and goes over to the Federation because he sees that they're losing. And that sets up the situation wherein the Primus eventually meets her end. Um, so it all traces back to that very first, yeah, throw him out the airlock.
So nothing seems to be taboo. Nothing seems to be a risk, no holds bar for your writing. So, therefore, are there some ways that you could advise other people for world building? Like when world building and character development fall short, what's the greatest piece of advice? Just like you said, step out of the way of your characters? Or is it letting
Well,
go of fear? Or.
for character development, definitely. I mean, if I had been afraid of what the characters were going to do or who they were going to be, um, I never would have opened the first book with a triad wedding. It's, Kendra, Ayana, and Derek, and they're all getting married. That that's just who they are.
That's
That
their
so
lives. Love is love. Life is life. World is world.
right. Um, as for the world building, don't look at the big picture. Don't get lost in the forest. Look at the trees. It's the little details that convince people more that they're in something, that they're reading something different, that they're reading something that's in a different time, a different place. Um, Again, first chapter, they're talking about the wedding and how the wedding day was perfect, and it should have been. They paid enough to weather control, to make sure it was. Right there, it's just that tiny little mention, but all of a sudden you have the whole, okay, so there's a mechanism whereby humanity has figured out how to control the weather, at least to some degree. And it's something that's commercially available, should you be willing to pay enough. Um, the minister who goes to assassinate them, um, he he doesn't pull out, a pistol or or a knife. He pulls out a flechette gun. Again,
It's those
tiny, tiny.
tiny details. Oh,
You know,
wow.
it's kind of like pointillism,
Mm.
in writing. If you have enough of these little points all over the place, pretty soon you step back and you have the world.
I like that. So, do art, music, fashion, and other cultural effects from our world play into that for you at all? As far as like, because you have this otherworldish type tech with the sci-fi aspect, do you do any research for your ships or artillery and things to make it more realistic, or no?
So the science in my books, I try to base it on stuff that is plausible. Um, so one of the things that's in there is it's alternately referred to as optical sapphire or transparent aluminum. It's the same thing,
Mhm.
um, and it is a real thing. Transparent aluminum is a real thing. It's synthetic aluminum that is, you know, you can see through it.
Mhm.
So that's something that I incorporated. There's a crystalline chromium seaborgium. Seaborgium is a real element. So I went ahead and tweaked a little bit of the physics to create this more stable element, and included that. Um, where I have to create science altogether. For example, they have warp drives, so they have faster than light travel. Um, no point in trying to explore the stars if you can't get there. So
Right.
again, I try to make it plausible. I try to make it self-contained and believable and coherent and non-contradictory in and of itself. To a degree, you have to say, okay, yes, I accept that. Now, as for art and culture, and from our time, it's funny that you mentioned that. Kendra goes back to Kendra.
I
Yeah,
definitely think we found the episode name. It all comes back to Kendra.
yeah.
Love
Um,
it.
so very early in the second chapter of the first book, I established that she has this. She would call it a fascination. Somebody standing on the outside might call it an obsession, um, with pop culture of our time period. So late 20th, early 21st century. So she's really enamored of Star Trek and
Mhm.
the idealism that Gene Roddenberry presented, the
Yes.
infinite diversity and infinite combinations, um, and people working together rather than, at opposition, and the equality. She believes in it. Okay, she absolutely. She was a little girl when she started watching these things, and she just absolutely 100% believes in it with all her heart. Uh, and she so now, after the first book, she's in a position where she has the influence in order the influence to make it happen. And she's like, well, I'll be damned if I'm not going to take advantage of this.
Yeah, really.
So she is reaching back into our reality, okay, into fiction from our reality to make it her reality in her fictional world.
Wow. Wow. Okay, so definitely a world that a lot of people will relate to automatically just from those little, like you said, details of relating back to things we all know and love. So, what is one piece of advice your character shared that has stuck with you along this journey then, as we're starting to wind down?
So, um, fourth book, A Quiet Revolution, Kendra is talking to the president of the Titan colony. And what she's trying to do is convince her to come over to her side. And she just lays it right out. I mean, there's no bull with Kendra. She is a straight shooter 100%. And she just says, this is what I want. And the president looks at her and goes, you're not asking for much, are you? And Kendra says, well, if I don't ask, you can't say yes.
And instead of saying you can't say no, she turned the paradigm of what we would originally think. Oh my goodness. That should be how we think about it, not the other way around. Oh, wow. Quite profound.
It
And
is.
of course,
It's
look who it's from.
right. Yes.
Go ahead, you were saying.
Oh, just my wife is a life coach, and she thought it was brilliant as well, and so she's using it with her clients
Oh, I imagine it
because
has a great
because
impact.
it's just it like you said, it turns it completely around. If I don't ask you, you can't say yes. It's
Oh,
always going to be no if I don't ask.
this is very true. So, wow. Thank you for that quite profound note for us to wind down on. Shout outs to others you know and wish to give some love and support to.
Well, I can never say enough about the people that I work with, um, who do you know who I work with on marketing and on the covers, and who do the audiobooks. Um, so marketing, Best Books Editors gotten in with you guys. That's fantastic. OWI and Scott Coatsworth, liminal fiction. He's done a lot of advertising. Um, Silver Dagger Tours for book tours. Yep. Maya is organized the whole thing, a month-long book tour for blog tour for the books. Uh, this is going fantastically. Michael Evan over at Fantasy and Science Fiction Focus. I've got great results with him. We just did a event this week, and you can still catch the sale on the omnibus edition. It's $5.99 right now, but you better catch it fast because that goes away in a couple of days.
Yeah, I saw the end date on it's quick approaching. So,
Oh yes, Kevin Anderson and his story bundles. I'm currently in the Sci-Fi adventure story bundle. You can get that. You can get 4 books for $5 or 13 books for $20. And yeah, storybundle.com. And that deal lasts until December 9th. But the covers, Emily's World of Design, she's been doing my covers since the beginning. She is fantastic. She knows what I want to do almost before I want to do it. So
I tell my cover artists the same thing. Get out of my head. Why do I even have to just tell you? It seems like I love that. And who else, my friend?
I mean, the last 2 covers that she's done for me for Quiet Revolution and Triumph's Ashes. Quiet Revolution was 2nd place in the all author cover contest. Triumph's Ashes was 1st place in a later month. So the last two books she did for me have been recognized, out there. I would hire her to do any kind of design whatsoever. And last but certainly not least, the narrators for my books, because the first narrator, Jane Weatherstone, she did the first 3 books, and she did a lovely job with the 3 books. She's a professional theater actress, and when COVID started lifting, she got busy, and she had other commitments. And I was fortunate enough to find Veronica Wiley, who's another professional actress. She does TV and movies, so her schedule's a little bit more flexible. So she's done the last 2 books. I look forward to working with her on many more. And I'm going to mention one more because Lexi Lyric does my book trailers. Now, I do a lot of my own videos, but Lexi Lyric, who is on Facebook, it's kind of hard to get her on Facebook. She doesn't check social media very much. She's very busy. But she's done 3 book trailers for me, and she's just finishing the 4th one. I should be able to be premiering that one soon. But if you've seen them, they're fabulous, absolutely fabulous. She does magic with the pixels.
I love your book trailers. I'm writing a lit RPG right now, and I keep telling my husband that's kind of the vibe I want, like color scheme wise, for my book trailers for this one. And it just blows my mind how good they are. Thank you so much for sharing them. And all the people you've mentioned, please make sure you get me their links if you like, and I'll pop information in the description below for them. So
Absolutely.
No problem. Do you have any questions for me as we finish up our evening together?
Oh, wow. Actually, I've been very fortunate to find lots of wonderful people in the indie community and the indie authors community. It really is a community. There isn't a sense of, dog eat dog out there, because we are all in this together. There are more readers than there will ever be stories. It is a market that cannot possibly be satisfied. So, the support that we're all giving each other is just, we all rise together.
That's how I feel. Our editor, our best book editors, keeps insisting to me of, Jenna, you should start charging for these. No, I don't want to charge for these for that reason, because I want you all to have your moment to shine. And I get a little bit of foot traffic through it, but I've had other people say, I found a new favorite author because I watched one of your previous videos now. That's the kind of stuff I care about as an indie author myself. So yeah, you're welcome to be here. I honestly would love to have you back another time, for sure. There's plenty to talk about, I'm sure. It seems like.
There is. Yeah. And that, and I put author interviews up on my website as well. I do 1 or 2 every Monday. They're all written interviews. and I've had, Isras Ravenheart,
Oh, I
who's
love
just
her.
joined. Yes, and Scott Kemak.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've been doing that all year, and again, just like you, there's no charge for it.
Right.
And I have Taylor Ann Vigil, who is a young author. She's finding her voice, but every Saturday she gets a spot on my website, to put up whatever it is she wants to put up. It's her writing spot. So
Mhm.
I'm featuring that because she's a good writer and she needs visibility.
It's truly about, like you said, the community. It's not
Yeah.
in trad, it feels dog eat dog, and I hate that. I really do. I love about indie that I don't care that I'm lifting you up another rung on your ladder, and I don't care if it doesn't move me at all at the same time. And I love that branch of community. So I'll always have this podcast for that specific reason there. So, any other
Wonderful.
questions from me this evening as we finish up, my friend?
No, no, I've had a blast. Fun
It has
talking
been.
about Kendra and all the crew.
Well, like I said, I think we know the episode name and it's totally okay. I don't mind it. When it comes about naturally, you take the title it gives you, whether it's writing or video production.
Yep.
So thank you very much, my lovelies, for joining us today. I hope everything is going great for you. Take care of yourselves. You're worth it. Bye, my friends.